Welcome to this first episode of Get Much Better. And to your question, much better than what? I refer specifically to health in general. The objectives of this program are 1. To provide useful and practical information about health and health issues, information that you may apply to yourself or any of your family and friends that may benefit from it. Number 2, to promote a better understanding of the interrelation between health and metabolism, a view that, at least up to our current time, and I'm talking about 2020, does not belong to the so-called mainstream view of medicine. This interrelation is generally ignored by the so-called establishment, and the reason is simple. Because a greater awareness of the relationship between metabolism and health goes against such massive economic interests. And 3, the series intends to suggest practical and verified treatment to deal with the variety of conditions, from the relatively simple to recognized severe health issues. The suggested treatments and remedies have absolutely nothing to do with so-called miracle cures or esoteric, strange concoctions. What will be shown are the results and conclusions of serious and verified medical studies conducted by well-known universities or research institutes. In other words, no miracles are promised, but only once the process of how illness develops and is explained, only common sense. In this episode, I intend to talk about metabolism. What does it mean and how it affects life in general? And how an understanding of the concept can actually change how we manage our physical self. Metabolism being the process by which the body converts food into energy. I will then describe how to determine the nature of our individual nervous systems. But first, this being an introductory episode, I will outline what inspired or prompted me to become interested in the subject. There is a Greek line attributable either to Hippocrates or Pythagoras, I am not sure, stating that after the age of 30, man should be the physician of himself. And it is a practice which, for good or for bad, I've applied to myself, though admittedly unevenly. All of us may have some recollection of what we learned in school, but probably, like many, I forgot most of what I learned. Consequently, there was no conscious regimen, for lack of a better word, in the handling of my everyday life as regards health. Then, with the explosion of social media, there began to appear online extensive information on health, diet, and healing advice for various ailments or conditions. We know that not all information is useful, but any is better than none. But there was, and there still is, a tendency in internet-based health information, a tendency to make exaggerated claims about this or that portentous formula, magic diet, a particular fruit or a vegetable, and so on. This is understandable, if not excusable, because you may agree our market-oriented culture expects quick, automatic solutions and almost no thought required by the consumer. It's called overpromising and underdelivering. Besides, this approach casts a bad light on the philosophy of natural healing simply because exaggeration kills confidence. An example is what I still remember reading on the front page of a tabloid displayed at the cash counter of a supermarket, which went 30 days to a beautiful bottom. This was consideration number 1 about skepticism. The second consideration is historical, and I think more important. It is a platitude to say that medicine has made enormous progress since, say, the 19th century. Let's consider that until the first quarter of the 19th century, when Andrew Jackson was president, to give a frame of reference, one procedure still in use for determining the sickness of a patient was the somewhat unappealing method of testing his or her urine. But this should not surprise us, because even the circulation of the blood, which we take for granted, was only discovered in 1625 by William Harvey. But what happened in the 19th century and later, in the last quarter of the 20th century, is really remarkable. I will not deal with this subject here, except for two considerations that are relevant to this program or the series. The 19th century, as we know, saw the explosion of the Industrial Revolution, which, of course, also meant the triumph of the machine. The ubiquitous and familiar presence of the machine radically altered the perception of basic ideas, including health and medicine. And when one of the machines became the automobile, it was but a single step in the collective consciousness to see an analogy between the machine and the body. And it was equally a simple step to see an analogy between a garage and a clinic. About 1 century later, to promote the transformation of medicine into technoscience was the essential universality of the computer, especially when it became personal in the last quarter of the 20th century. Man had finally created the perfect means, the image and the metaphor to describe himself. Now, the central operating system, the brain, and its software, the mind, controls the peripheral, the organs, by dispensing current, the blood, and special signals like hormones and so forth. The metaphor is so appealing as to obscure or almost nullify the influence of an indispensable, or better, crucial element involved not just in health, but actually in keeping us alive. And I refer here to what is called metabolism. Metabolism derives from a Greek word, metabalein, which means to change. And the word metabolism applied to the operation of the body was actually coined in 1878 and refers to the sum of the chemical changes within the body by which the protoplasm and the cells themselves are renewed, changed, and disposed of. I think it's fair to say that the prevailing philosophy in current medicine is based on the analogy between the body and the computer. Nothing wrong with the analogy, of course. Analogy is the use of something we know in order to understand what we don't. But there the function of the analogy ends. And I hope I do not raise too many eyebrows in saying that current medicine is based on the body-computer analogy. I am generalizing, and the generalization totally excludes, for example, that branch of medicine that deals with trauma, where the progress is incredible and almost at times unthinkable. Here I am referring to the medicine directed at curing ailments, big or small, that are the marks of our mortality. This medicine, maybe you agree, is based on the analogy human body-computer with associated specializations in various peripherals, which, in the analogy, are the organs. Another natural consequence by applying this analogy is that medicine tends to treat the symptoms rather than the cause by eliminating them, the symptoms, with a large array of medicines and treatments. But metabolism is different. It treats the body as an inseparable whole, not consisting of independent peripherals, but of peripherals that interact with each other 24/7, and all under the control and supervision of the central operating system. I mean with this that metabolism deals with the interaction between the nervous system and all the other parts of the body. with the idea of addressing the health problems or condition by starting from the source of the condition and not from the end. And there is nothing esoteric, actually, or extraordinary in this. You may ask, what is the consequence of the difference? I mean, dealing with the source rather than the symptom of a health condition. The consequence is actually huge because thanks to a large volume of medical research, it has been possible to better relate the symptoms that affect a part of the body to other parts of the body that contribute to the malaise, and to what action the brain and the mind, and if you like the analogy, the operating system and the software, what action the brain and the mind can undertake in order to alleviate and cure the illness that affects that specific organ, the peripheral, if you like, that gives the problems. But what does it mean? What does it mean in practice? It means the substitution of procedures that are often invasive with methods of healing that are non-invasive, more natural, and more in tune with the general operation of the mind-body system, which, after all, is what each one of us is. I mean, a body system, a body-mind system, medically speaking, that is, of course. And this may be of special interest even in this time of pandemics. There is a large volume of serious research and methods to strengthen the individual immune system. Research categorized again under the overall concept of metabolism. One of the benefits of metabolism is that it is a discipline, an approach, a system, if you like, available to all, and its costs compared to, compared to technomedicines are minuscule. Because there is a history in all men's lives, as Shakespeare would say, I will tell you briefly how I became interested in metabolism and who in particular has inspired me with the idea of this series. To begin with, there are 3 books that I read quite some time ago which confirmed a certain personal perspective on medicine as a whole, a perspective of which I had only vague ideas. The books are respectively Limits to Medicine by Ivan Illich. The second is titled The Rise and Fall of Modern Medicine, written by a medical doctor, James Le Fanu. And the third is a small one, written by a medical doctor after he retired. The book is in Italian, and the title is controversial: Useless Doctors and Insane Medicines. Should a physician watch this program, I hope he will not think that I am disrespectful. I have nothing to do with the book other than reading it. But by far, the most important influence, an influence that has been of direct benefit to me, is that of a genuine, successful, and excellent specialist in metabolism, whose name is Mr. Frank Suarez. Mr. Suarez has an extended practice with a large network of clinics all over Latin America, in Puerto Rico and Florida. Mr. Suarez has uploaded online a wide range of videos dealing with various illnesses and complaints attributable to one or more specific and correctable causes, all linked to improper metabolism. My interest increased quite dramatically when, by following Mr. Suarez, I applied his advice in treating some complaints that had bothered me for some time, and sometimes quite a long time. Then I heard and saw Mr. Suarez explaining my complaint, its probable source, and the suggested remedy. I was skeptical, but I did try it. And my interest, as you can probably agree, peaked even more dramatically when quickly, I'd say in a matter of weeks, the complaint disappeared and never came back, so far. Furthermore, Mr. Suarez based his suggestions and counsels on the latest medical researches conducted by well-known universities and famous medical facilities, which means that his counsel and suggested remedies are based on up-to-date research, and they are what we call natural. You may ask yourself, Why could I not watch Mr. Suarez directly? It's a good question. Of course you could, and I certainly recommend it. But Mr. Suarez's videos are in Spanish. My plan is also to blend actual usable health information with anecdotal information about medical history, which blending medical information with information about medical history implies a certain continuous link with the other series of mine, historical sketches, of which there are at the moment already 67 episodes online. And now to the specific subject of this first episode. Some, or many of you may have heard the expression applied to someone who has a slow metabolism. Metabolism is a neologism, that is, a new word, historically speaking, that is. A German doctor by the name of Theodor Schwann introduced the term in 1878 to describe the chemical processes that take place in living tissue. In turn, metabolism comes from the Greek word metabalein, which means to change, to transform through motion, meaning the sum of all the changes and operations occurring in the body to convert food and nutrients into the energy required to survive. Take the classical piece of bread. It is too big for the cells to use it as such. Metabolism in this case refers to the process that converts and transforms food into molecular form, in particular glucose, you may have heard of, a chemical substance which is subsequently fed to the cells, and all with the purpose of creating energy that gives motion to the body. Typical example with slow metabolism is gaining weight easily, characterized, for example, by a great desire to eat by just looking at food. As we will see, fast and slow metabolism are directly linked to our nervous system, which is subdivided into active and passive. We will see how understanding the active and passive parts of our nervous system, our individual nervous system, is step number one to manage our individual metabolism for all subsequent improvements concerning health. It is important to know what type of nervous system an individual has, for the nervous system controls all the different parts of the body, glands, hormones, circulation, of course, throughout the body. The system is automatic, and its actual name is autonomic nervous central system, because none of us, for example, thinks at any moment about the speed of the heart or if the stomach is digesting and so on. In this respect, it has been discovered that it is very important whether in an individual the dominating element is the so-called parasympathetic nervous system or the sympathetic nervous system. For ease of remembering, I will refer to the sympathetic system as the excitable and to the parasympathetic system as the passive system. Now, why is this important? Given our individual differences, the individual metabolism and diet should match the inherent and dominant characteristics of our respective nervous systems. The typical excitable nervous system displays various characteristics, of which some have to do with eating and some with sleep. It just so happens that the characteristics that have to do with eating also involve the use of meat. Personally, I've been a vegetarian for decades, so that would not apply to me. But nevertheless, persons with an excitable nervous system have at least one of the following characteristics. There may be higher or lower degrees of excitability, but the presence of just one of the characteristics is evidence of an excitable person. Characteristic number one: it does not digest well red meat, or it digests it very slowly. Alternately, the person does not like red meat. Another characteristic: he does not like, or she does not like pork meat, fatty food, including fatty cheese. The excitable system is primarily an acid system, and as such it tends to reject all acids. Fat is an acid. We all have heard of the term fatty acids. Pork meat and red meat also contain a high degree of acid, and an acid body does not like more acid added to it, which seems to make sense. If this is the case, then your nervous system can be classified among the excitable. The third characteristic of an excitable person is that he does not sleep well when he eats late at night, because the food is not digested or only partially digested. If an excitable person eats late at night, then he has difficulty to fall asleep. Why? Because the poorly digested food remains in the stomach, causing further acidity in an already acid base. The person with an excitable nervous system has a sleep that is easily interrupted. Now, we're not going to this now, but there are 5 degrees of sleep depth, and the most important, deep and restoring type of sleep is called the alpha level. Alpha level sleep is associated with the passive nervous system. Now, if you have any of these characteristics that I just mentioned, it means that you are the owner of a predominantly excitable system, or more properly, your sympathetic nervous system is prevalent in the management of your metabolism. In turn, the diet for a person with this type of nervous system should be more vegetable-based, meaning more salads, chicken and turkey as opposed to other types of meat, seafood, almost no fatty food, because the fats are bad for this kind of nervous system structure. Also, the system needs much water as a whole, and there will be an episode dedicated to the recommended level of water to be drunk during the day according to the weight and nervous system type. The body benefits from adequate amounts also of organic potassium and magnesium supplement, because on average this person, or the excitable person, is more easily subject to constipation, problems with the teeth, digestive and sleep problem, as mentioned before. And if losing fat is a goal, poor sleep does not help in the endeavor. On this line of thought, namely the importance of recognizing the difference between the 2 types of nervous systems, let's consider the most recent research results on how the nervous system controls and changes all the functions of the body, changes in the organs and their functioning. The fundamental objective of metabolism is to produce energy, for there is no life without motion, and there is no motion without energy. Metabolism produces energy inside the cells, and this energy produced inside the cells is called ATP, adenosine triphosphate, or adenosine triphosphate, which is the chemical energy of the body. ATP is the fuel that keeps the heart pumping, the lungs breathing, and the eyes blinking, for even blinking requires energy, and so forth. Given that we all have an active and passive side of the nervous system, distributed originally in different proportions, health problems arise when the system is unbalanced. In medical terms, the balance is called homeostasis, a Greek word meaning an equilibrium. When there is homeostasis, there is a balance between the 2 components of the nervous system, and health requires this. For example, the passive system causes the pupil to contract and prepare the body for sleep. If there is light around it, sleep becomes more difficult because the pupil cannot adequately contract to and adapt to sleep. In turn, the excitable nervous system causes a relaxation and an enlargement of the pupil. For example, in a person ready to do battle or to be alert, the pupil is quite open. The pupils are quite open. As much light as possible is needed to react to any situation. Another organ, the tongue. The tongue is involved in eating, digestion, and of course the digestive system. The passive system causes the tongue to produce saliva through the salivary gland. When we see or anticipate eating an appealing food, then the saliva is promptly produced. But during emergencies, no saliva is produced. In essence, the passive system produces, then the excitable system dries the saliva. With the heart, the passive system reduces the pulse and also the blood pressure, whereas the excitable nervous system increases both pulse and blood pressure. With the lungs, when the passive system is in control, they contract. When the excitable system takes over, the lungs relax, open up, so that more air can come in. During an infection, the passive and the immune system take over to contract the lungs. With the stomach and the intestine, the passive system increases the motion. But in case of stress or similar, when the excitable system takes over and reduces the respective motion, this is what happens. The excitable system reduces the motion. With the liver, the passive system causes the liver to detoxify itself, and also under the stimulus of the passive system, the liver produces and stores a substance called glycogen. Glycogen is the sugar stored by the body to be in turn used when needed. Under the predominance of the excitable system, the glycogen is extracted from the liver and converted into fat. The urethra under passive system control opens up and enables urine elimination. Under conditions of stress, the urethra is closed. Why? Because the excitable nervous system prepares the body for action. Why is this information important? Because once these facts are recognized, we can better manage the influence and the balance of the two systems, to start with a diet suited to the individual's nervous system composition. In general, the purpose of the passive system is to build, refresh, and restore. The purpose of the active system is to fight, to run, and to struggle. Thank you for watching. Until next time, I am Jimmy Moglia for Get Much Better. Good night.